Satyogis are explorers of the depths of consciousness. The truth is that all human beings explore consciousness, but many choose to do it at only the surface levels of the consciousness of the sensorium or the phenomenal plane, or the consciousness of interpersonal reality, or the consciousness of mathematics and logic and the realities observed by science. And some choose to observe the consciousness in altered states produced by chemicals. But what is the natural depth of our being? How deep is the deep dimension? How far can we take this exploration? The limits of our exploration depend on our willingness to let go of the rules of the game that we learned that pinned consciousness to the phenomenal plane. The rule that you must believe that your consciousness pertains to your bodily organism. Once you buy into that rule, you are stuck at the biographical level of consciousness and can never escape the hell realm of the traumas that occurred in the life of the organism. And once you have accepted that the I thought refers to the body, then you belong to the bodily world. And since you did not create your own body, your body belongs to others. To a mother, to a biological family, to a nation, a lineage, a religious tradition, to varieties of institutions that will claim you. And if you accept the premise that the I is the body, then according to that, you are subject to all the rules of those who claim rights over your body. And there are many. And this is precisely what the social other is for. Every time you get a driver's license or get fingerprinted or get numbered in some way, the state is claiming rights over your body. And if you are the body, then you belong to that institution. And every time you accept the name that was given by the biological family, you have accepted their ownership rights over your life and the meaning of your existence and the appropriate loyalties that you must maintain. And one of those loyalties is to never let go of that level of consciousness in which you belong to them. And so they will literally haunt your mind because you have submitted to the presence of their images, signifiers, fantasies and desires and fears and frames of reference that determine and imprison your consciousness within their realm of affects. And you are controlled by the affects imposed by the other. And therefore, even one of those others rejecting you will create depression and fear. And if one of those who own you reject you, you will hate yourself and feel unworthy. Because the consciousness at that level that we call ego is enslaved to the need for validation of the other before you can begin to live a life. And the existential agony of most egos today is they have not received that validation. And thus they cannot go on with their lives. Nor will they receive it, because to receive it means that the other will cede some of their control. And this they will not do. Thus, if you want freedom, you must fight for it by cutting the psychic umbilical cord that connects you to all of those external others who demand the loyalty of your consciousness to them, and thus cripple your own creative potential. And cause you to repress your own knowledge of who you are and of what is truly in your heart to make your life about. And thus, at the ego level, we lead lives for the other, to get the other's respect, to earn that affirmation. And we do not live to discover the self, but only to appear as a self that will receive the approval and the desire of external others. If we wish to explore the depth dimension of our consciousness, the first thing we discover is that the consciousness does not pertain to the body at all. The consciousness preceded the body. All that was constructed once the body came into birth was the ego, but it is only a construct that appears within our consciousness as we learn to follow the rules imposed upon us in that social setting that we call the family, and then the school system, and then all of the other systems in which we are indoctrinated. And we forget even that we have forgotten who we really are. And once that the system can get you to believe that you can only think with the assistance of language, you become a subject of the signifier. And you are trapped within the limits that language can allow you to understand yourself. But language is inherently embedded in duality. And the I thought is always loaded with the baggage of the premises and the conditionings and the traumas of the past. And the capacity to use language in order to deconstruct those images and concepts of the self is the only hope that one has in order to make language an instrument of liberation rather than imprisonment. But to be able to use language rather than to be used by it, one must separate oneself from the need to know yourself through words, images, including sonic images of music or art or any reflection or representation of the self. Because the self is not representable. And then finally, you can exist in the real beyond language. And use language as an instrument to cut away the ego's enmeshments, its falseness, its attachment to obsolete identifications and loyalties. And then take the step of going beyond language into the silence of pure awareness. And only in that freedom from the signifier and from all self-concepts, only then does the spiritual journey begin. And so the first and most difficult phase of the work of meditation is to silence the mind. And this is a struggle because the mind has been trained never to stop thinking, never to stop secreting thoughts that relate you to the other, and never to stop creating veils of ignorance and illusion that separate you from your real self, and to keep you wrapped in affects of loneliness and longing, of weakness, of abandonment, of illusions of meaninglessness, of despair, of being a creature lost in a heartless world. But are you a creature? The body is a creature. And the dominant metaphor of the modern age is that we are animals who have evolved Darwinistically from the apes. If you believe that story, that degraded mythology, then you will never come out of the imprisonment in real one and in the terror that comes with animal existence. You could accept another of the dominant metaphors that we are machines and get lost in a cybernetic identification as a piece of software, a hologram. But that too would limit your ability to know the full powers of consciousness. And it is necessary to recognize what metaphor you have accepted, because the metaphor is the religion of the consciousness. And so long as there is any metaphoric frame of reference, consciousness will be limited to the extent of the possibilities of permutation of that metaphor. But metaphors are creations of consciousness. Consciousness is not a creature, but a creator. Consciousness has no objective correlative, neither physical nor mental. And it is our freedom from our own self-objectification, from our own subjectivity that demands dependence upon an inner object, whether a physical object image or a mental object. But it is the freedom from being anchored to the objects that arise in the mind that enable us to let go of the finite, limited realm of ego consciousness and enter into the depths of the real, in which the power and presence of Shiva can be found. But this means letting go of all the beliefs about the self, because the self has no gender, no form, no age, no nationality, no need for loyalty to anything but God, which is the yet unknown source of one's possibility of knowing anything at all. It is this quest for the source of the I, the source of the sense of being, of presence, that constitutes the essential quest for liberation from illusion and ignorance, from the realm of mortality, from the rule of fear, and from the futility of desire, to shield you from the helplessness and terrors of the ego mind. But because the signifiers of language and the images of objects of attachment have become our props that give us a sense of security, even if it's negative security, but the security of a habitat to let go of the psychic attachment to images and language, to the bodily sense, and to the finite world, to enter into the truth of boundless openness, of consciousness without limits, requires the ultimate courage that the ego itself does not possess, because it was constructed out of fear, and fear is at its core. And it because of fear that the ego prefers to worship God than to realize that you are that, or to worship some proxy substitute for God, whether it's money or drugs or a family system or a flag of some kind. All is done out of paranoia. And so in meditation, we must go beyond the gravity of fear and the enmeshment in concepts and images, and enter into the depths of absolute presence without name or form. It is only in the stillness and silence that we discover the real nature of power. The real nature of love. And the truth of what we are. But that truth is untranslatable back into language or into images. It can be hinted at, but it is a story that can never be told. Because the whole universe already expresses it. But its expression is not in words, but as the purity of the radiance of energy, of the infinite luminosity of astonishment and wonder and awe at the majesty and glory of what is behind the scenes and creates all that is. And the knowledge, the realization, the attainment of the truth of who you are and what you are behind the scene of this creaturely, phenomenal dream is worth all the effort of overcoming the resistances of the mind and settling for a false existence as a creature in someone else's dream. Until you gain your freedom from all the collective dreams of all the others who are themselves being dreamed, and escape into the real beyond, into the truth of the dreamer. Suffering cannot end, because ultimately we suffer from our own alienation from who we are, because we know that we are not living the truth of our being. And because we are manifestations of truth, we cannot live in peace with ourselves until we are in complete oneness with that truth. That truth that is supreme. And alone capable of transforming this world. That has degraded because of the loss of our connection with the truth of what we are. Let us awaken from the nightmares produced in the ego mind and the bondages that we have freely accepted to live in degraded and false consciousness, and let go of all the pettiness of the ego's machinations and live in the glorious presence of the Supreme Self that we are. This is the Dharma of Sat Yoga.